As climates change, we are left scrambling to predict the consequences on fellow species and ourselves, because how climate affects biological organisms is complicated and often hard to measure. Some studies suggest that by the end of the century, 1 in 10 species will be extinct. Understanding how a species will be affected by climate change is complex. Many different factors make up the life history of an organism, such as diet, habitat, age at reproduction, number of offspring, and mortality. These traits can all be affected by the climate, whether it is the natural variation of seasons or human-caused climate change. There are many dynamic components interacting with one another here. Add migration to the mix, and you're talking about one complicated picture. For starters, migrating animals can cover some serious ground, or air, or sea. Their life cycle, by nature, can be spread out across a vast geographical swath, which means they have multiple climates to deal with. So, how do we measure the effects of climate change on species that are constantly on the move? Studying their whole life cycle is a good place to start. By obtaining data on the whole year, scientists can piece together a picture of the climate during critical times of a migrating species cycle.
My name is Stéphanie Genouvrier. I am a seabird ecologist, and with French colleagues, we are studying the black-browed albatross,
a migrating seabird in the subantarctic.
This study focuses on how climate influences the bird's foraging habit and how their foraging habits affect things like how many adults breed and how many raise a chick successfully. During the breeding season, it is relatively easy to observe albatrosses because they breed on islands in the Southern Ocean like Kerguelen Island.
These stations and others like these facilitate long-term studies and are crucial for scientists to gain understanding on this major part of the bird's life cycle. During the breeding season, researchers tag each bird with an ID band, enabling them to keep track of individuals year after year. The breeding season begins with the males flying back early to build a nest. Black-browed albatross mate for life and rear the chick together. Successful mating couples will incubate their one egg for 2 months. For the whole breeding season, mates will take turns flying 60 to 200 miles offshore for food. By January, the chicks are ready to hatch. The chicks that do hatch grow bigger and bigger. In late April, it is time to leave the breeding grounds and return to wintering waters. This is where it gets tricky for researchers. It'd be like finding a needle in a haystack, if the needle had wings and the haystack were much larger. Observations are made from research vessels, but seeing that ID tag can be difficult. Knowing where and how specific individuals spend their time during the winter may be necessary to predict how climate change will affect these birds. So scientists are starting to rely on some new technology.
The GLS is global location sensing.
That's Solène Sacré.
It's calculating the temperature of water, the light intensity.
It's able to tell when it's submerged in water or not?
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
Because it's on the leg of the bird, we can detect if they are foraging or not.
Having data on the black-browed albatross's activity at sea helps researchers have a fuller picture of the bird's annual cycle. Like flying from Seattle to Miami, but even further, colder, and probably windier, these birds travel 3,600 miles to Tasmanian waters from Kerguelen. But the warming ocean could endanger the albatross's food supply. If the ocean continues to warm, will the black-browed albatross get enough to eat? If they begin to use more energy searching for food that is harder to come by, will they have the energy required to migrate back to Kerguelen? Will they have enough energy to breed the following season? With long-term monitoring, scientists will be able to connect how the black-browed albatross's habits, breeding successes, and population change with a changing environment.